What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today I wanted to showcase a bit more of a tryhard team for those of you still trying to climb in the Go Battle League. The season is nearing its end, and I figured this would be a good time to showcase a team like this. Clodsire is a Pokemon that has a lot of play. It's very bulky. It's also a great core breaker people don't really expect anymore. Shadow Annihilape and Dugong as well. Very powerful Pokemon. So let's take a look at this team in action and see what it can do. Alright, let's get into the first game here. We have our Clodsire in the lead, rocking Sludge Bomb up against a Shadow Annihilape. This is a very neutral matchup, actually. We are also using Shadow Annihilape, and we can see on our own we are running Ice Punch. If our opponent is running Ice Punch, that could be super effective against us, but we still are going to be able to survive this charge move nonetheless. No shield this up, and of course, a Rage Fist is going to come through. With that said, I'm going to go for a Sludge Bomb bait. Let's see if our opponent is going to opt to shield this, or if they will let this move go. Earthquake would nearly one-shot our opponent, though, playing very risky. They actually opt to go for the no shield there, and unfortunately, somehow I lagged a turn, which means I CMP on a potential Ice Punch, and now that they've made that call, this is looking so bad for us. I have to come in with our Shadow Annihilape, try our best to, maybe counter this down. I don't know if that's even possible at this point, but these resisted counters are Shadow into Shadow here, so there's a chance that we can get a ton of energy out of this matchup. Maybe it's not the worst case scenario. Let's see what's going to happen. Rage Fist does come through. We shield it up, and in comes a Corsola. ABA Ghost is a very tricky team to deal with here for us, but I do have my Dugong, which can at least try its best to go for these Icy Winds, debuff their attack stat, and maybe make it so this Pokemon is not going to destroy our Annihilape. We get that debuff off first, our opponent not throwing the charge move until CMP. Looks like we do win CMP. A little bit IV dependent action. They go for a Nightshade of all things instead of going for a Power Gem here. Power Gem obviously is super effective, but Nightshade has a little bit better pacing, so our opponent likely does opt to that to try to outpace us here. With that said, another Ice Wind is going to be thrown. Our opponent overperforming so much energy here, and we actually did draw a shield there with that Icy Wind. And comes the next Drill Run. Our opponent is going to try their best to farm us down with this Drapion. I don't think it's going to be quite enough, though, before we can try to farm them down with our Ice Shards. Yeah, they're forced to throw energy against us, and now we can likely counter this down, hopefully using an energy lead with our Shadow Annihilape to win this game. We almost have two charge moves here. That Corsola does have energy on it, but as long as a catch doesn't happen, we should be able to win this game by going for two Rage Fists against the Corsola, shield up with the Nightshade, and then potentially countering down their Annihilape. In comes a charge move here. I know I can survive all the Astonish damage before I can get to these two Rage Fists here. It's just going to come down to if our opponent can catch or not. Rage Fist number one coming through. I have the next one loaded as well. Our opponent does opt to shield it up, and they are waiting. I end up seeing them wait, so I keep on doing your counters, and now we have a Rage Fist ready to go. GG's to our opponent, somehow able to overcome that one. Alright, Clodsire up against a shiny Shadow Kanto Marowak. Very cool Pokemon to see, but a very bad Pokemon nonetheless for our Poison-type Pokemon. And unfortunately for us, we bait out a Corsola here with our Shadow Ape. That's not what you want to see, but these Rage Fists will start adding up over time. Let's see how our opponent wants to play this out. If they do want to be able to knock us out before a Rage Fist is going to be reached, they likely need to throw a charge move. I do have a pretty high rank Shadow Annihilape here, so barely able to survive on 1 HP. Exactly what we want to see here. Rage Fist does give us a shield advantage, but we are still in a bit of a tricky spot where they have a lot of energy on Corsola. I likely have to go for an Earthquake to knock this out from this range. If I did have Stone Edge, that would be enough, but I don't think Sludge Bomb will be quite enough, or if I do throw Sludge Bomb, it's going to take a lot more fast pressure to finish this Pokemon off. I want to come out of this matchup if I can with a bit of energy to throw against that Marowak if possible, but I have no idea what that final Pokemon is going to be this game, and I just have to hope that our Dugong is going to have play. Earthquake is going to be thrown. It's going to hopefully knock out this Corsola, but also I guess it'd be fine if they shield that up and use a second shield here. In comes that Marowak once again, and the final Pokemon going to be revealed as a Shadow Alolan Sandslash rocking Shadow Claw as their fast move. In this meta, we normally see a lot of Powder Snow users actually as the fast attack on these A-Slashes, so interesting to see Shadow Claw. Much worse for us in this scenario because Shadow Claw obviously is neutral rather than being extremely resisted by our Ice and Water typing, which means a lot of fast pressure despite landing that Drill Run, not quite enough damage with our fast move to knock him out. I have to go for another charge move. Icy Wind at this point likely will draw a shield, but I still have to throw another charge move if I ever want to knock out this A-Slash, and even after this debuff, these Shadow Claws are adding up, and Drill Run as well is likely going to put us low enough where that Marowak could finish us off. In comes the Drill Run. We do get almost knocked out by it. I think at this point the only win condition is shielding this up, trying to go for a full Ice Shard down, but I think they can get another charge move off if I try to go for that. In comes another charge move here from our opponent. 3 Ice Shards not quite enough, so an Ice Punch likely going to be thrown. Is Ice Punch enough to knock us out at a debuff? It likely still is. Unfortunately, Shadow A-Slash just a little bit too powerful here, and Marowak way too healthy in the backline. Alright, next matchup, Clodsire up against a Gastrodon, another Mud Slap user. Exactly what we don't want to see, but we'll see if we have any play by safe swapping our Shadow Annihilape Annihilape and trying to win this game. But once again, met by a very tricky Pokemon here for our Annihilape to see. Our Annihilape is going to go for an Ice Punch, at least bait that this could be a close combat. They likely will shield this up, and if they do, we might still have some play. They do shield, which is exactly what we want to see here. I can come into their Clodsire, absorb all of the energy. I know Icy Wind will do a decent chunk of damage to us, but Clodsire resisting these charms is going to be able to abuse this matchup quite a bit. In comes an Icy Wind, as I said, our attack is going to be lowered. It will make it so it's going to be a bit more of an awkward farm down here, so I'm going to go for a charge move and try to undercharge this if I can to get a bit more charge move or a bit more energy for whatever is going to come in. Unfortunately, though, I undercharged a bit too little there actually that time, and I end up giving them a lot less, or I end up having a lot less energy than I'd like to have on my Clodsire. In comes their Gastrodon. Once again, they're staying in this matchup. I know Shield, oh, and Earth Power, not what we should have done there. Should have shielded that up. I thought for sure they were going to go for a Body Slam bait. This game is unwinding very quickly. With that said, though, they're not swapping out. There's a good chance the final Pokemon is going to be like a Drifblim or something like a flying type Pokemon is often paired with these Gastrodons. So there is still play, potentially, depending on what that final Pokemon is going to be. Body Slam now is going to be shielded. It feels so bad to shield debuffed Body Slams, but it's kind of what we have to do right now. And now I have to shield yet again if I want any chance of knocking out this Gastrodon. In comes another Body Slam shield, love to see it, and now Icy Wind will either knock them out or draw the final shield here. They might shield this to try to Mud Slap us down and make it so we don't get that final Icy Wind off, which is exactly what ends up happening. But the final Pokemon might be playable. It's actually a Shadow Pidgeot, one of the squishiest Pokemon that I could possibly have seen here. Sludge Bomb number 1 does end up landing. If the next Sludge Bomb is enough to knock them out, we can outpace them before an Aerial Ace is going to be reached. As long as this knocks out, Clodsire might actually pull out this endgame. Sludge Bomb going to be thrown, our opponent gets knocked out, and now we can Poison Sting down the Mud Slapper, somehow overcoming that game. Alright, next matchup, we're going to see a Clodsire up against a Shadow Drapion, a matchup which you might expect would be very good for a Ground-type Pokemon. Drapion's only real weakness is that Ground-type damage, but with that said, we are doing resisted Poison-type damage, and Earthquake is such a slow-charging move, even with Poison Sting, that as long as they shield these moves up properly, they're going to be able to just spam out these Aqua Tails and win the 2-shield matchup. I'm going to go for a Sludge Bomb bait. Let's see what our opponent's going to do. Our whole team has a lot of play to this Pokemon, so if I do get a shield here, I want to swap out to our Dugong and start applying even more pressure in the backline. Likely going to be a Crunch getting thrown here. It could be a Sludge Bomb, I guess, if they are running that for Azumarill pressure. No, just a Crunch here, so we know their full moveset. And we bait out, I guess that's actually a really good thing to bait out here, a Wigglytuff, a Pokemon that our Shadow Annihilape really doesn't want to see. And we can start debuffing them here with our Icy Winds, making it so their life is very uncomfortable. If they do end up putting a Charge Move, that's fine by me. If they don't, then I can put them very low into a counter or Poison Sting downrange. In fact, I'm going to Note Shield, or Undercharge rather, on this Icy Wind, try to get even more Poison Stings if I can. And I stop tapping, they stop tapping at the same time, so unfortunately going to actually do that extra Ice Shard of damage. I wanted to get even more energy here if I could have, but because of that stop tapping by them, I was able to do one extra Ice Shard I didn't really want to do. At this point, though, I can go for a counter down. We have energy on our Annihilape, energy on Clodsire. We know 2 of their Pokemon. What is their final Pokemon going to be here? I guess we'll never find out. Likely something weak to counter. GG's to them. Next game here, a Wigglytuff, this time in the lead matchup, exactly where we want to see it. Let's see what our opponent is going to swap in. It is a Drifblim as a safe swap of Pokemon, which does pair pretty often with those Wigglytuffs. It could be a triple Icy Wind team. I have seen that a couple times with like a Dugong in the backline. I'm going to undercharge this just in case they end up no-shielding, so I can get even more Ice Shard energy, but they do opt to shield that up, meaning that the undercharge is a little bit pointless, but the Shadow Ball will do quite a bit of damage. If I can, I want to keep switch, right? We know we have Clodsire to Wigglytuff. We don't really want to go down switch this game when I know for sure it's going to help us out to win this matchup. In comes the next Icy Wind. Our opponent likely will end up letting this go, knowing that I don't get knocked out by a double debuff Shadow Ball, which is what ends up happening here. And now Icy Wind's going to be thrown once again against this Wigglytuff. There's a chance, though, as well, there could be a Mud Slapper in the backline. That is another very common team. I'm thinking either Mud Slap or Dugong is going to be their final Pokemon. Either way, it will be an interesting endgame. I know if it's like a Kanto Marowak, that would be the worst case scenario. They're actually going to throw energy here before I get my Drill Run off. Smart play as long as they want to knock out my Dugong, but it will mean they have very little energy for our Clodsire. In comes the final Pokemon. It is a Mud Slapper, but luckily not the Shadow Kanto Marowak, which might have actually put in quite a bit of work into our backline. Instead, it's going to be that Gastrodon, which has the bait move Body Slam, which if they do end up going for Body Slams, it's going to do nothing to me, and I don't think they can reach a bait plus a nuke here with Earth Power. I'm going to just shield this up just because I know at this point there's no way they're going to reach an Earth Power before I can get my next Rage Fist off. Body Slam going to be thrown here. I could have no-shield that, but I also know for a fact just shielding this up, going for another Rage Fist, should be able to win us this game. Rage Fist does end up knocking them out here. In comes that Wigglytuff, and at this point, these boosted counters are doing so much damage to them, they end up top lifting. Next game, Clodsire up against a Shadow Annihilape, a very scary Pokemon to see just in general, but we saw earlier on today that you can survive these counters and these Rage Fists, but if they do end up going for these attack boosts and then going for an Ice Punch, it can be a little bit tricky. In comes a charge move. What is it going to be? Just a Rage Fist here. It looks like I no-shield that up, and I go for an Earthquake to try your best to draw a shield from this Shadow Annihilape. In comes Earthquake. Our opponent does opt to shield that up, and because I know a lot of the time these Annihilape teams are going to be kind of weak to our Shadow Annihilape of our own in the backline, I'm going to swap it in, start ramping up our own attack, and see what our opponent is going to do. Rage Fist does get a shield from us, but I know we're going to get either a shield from them or a knockout against this Pokemon. In comes Rage Fist. Our opponent does opt to shield it up here, and now our counters are doing a lot of damage. Honestly, we're taking a lot of damage ourselves, though, because of how boosted up this Annihilape is. We're already in the yellow just with, I guess, boosted, very resistant damage with these counters. And comes the final Pokemon, or the secondary Pokemon. It's going to be a Corsola here. Another ABA team to Wigglytuff. I can't believe I'm seeing this, but at this point, the switch clock has been misaligned so much. I can come in with our Clodsire, try our best to go for an Earthquake in just a second, and knock this Pokemon out. We don't have a great answer to Corsola with this team. We have a lot of neutral play into it, but I would say that getting this thing out of the way early on is going to be very helpful. Earthquake might not be enough. I hope it is enough to knock them out, but if it isn't, it could be a little bit tricky. It is unfortunately not enough to knock them out, but one Poison Sting is enough to knock them out. If that Annihilape comes back in, I should be able to reach a Sludge Bomb here, potentially knocking them out before they can reach a Rage Fist. Let's see what's going to happen. Fortunately for us, the Annihilape does come back in here, which is exactly what we want to see, knowing our Dugong wants to avoid this at all costs. Sludge Bomb is going to come through, our opponent letting it go because they have no shields left, I guess, and in comes their final Pokemon, a Shadow Drapion. They can go for Aqua Tail here to knock us out, but I have our Dugong. Our team, honestly, very strong as a whole against the Shadow Drapion. And just come in with our Dugong, go for a Drill Run against this, and win the game here with that super effective charge attack. Our opponent realizing at that point, not much Drapion can do GG's to them. Next game, Clodsire up against a Talonflame in the lead. If we had Stone Edge, this matchup would be a little bit better, but our opponent doesn't know our moveset, right? So likely we're going to get a shield here with a Stone Edge bait by going for 7 and then throwing the Sludge Bomb. Let's see if our opponent is going to be a very risky player or if they're going to just shield this move up. Sludge Bomb does get a shield, and now they're likely going to throw either a Fly or a Brave Bird, maybe in a Flame Charge against us, depending on the moveset. Let's see how they want to play this out. In comes a move that is actually a Flame Charge here. Interesting stuff. I have a Flame Charge or a Sludge Bomb of our own to throw back against them here. Let's see if they want a double shield. I would be surprised if they do at this point. Sludge Bomb ends up landing, and now our opponent likely has to throw another charge move if they want to knock us out from this range. In comes likely another Flame Charge, but it could be a Fly if they want to start outpacing us here. In comes, yeah, I guess it is a Fly, which means that because of the CMP, we can lock them in here before they can throw a secondary charge move, and this Sludge Bomb should be more than enough to knock out this Talon if they let it go. In the back, a bit of a tricky Pokemon to see, actually. It's a Serperior. This Pokemon is going to be able to outpace and go for a CMP against us. Aerial Ace will knock us out, unfortunately. We do have our Dugong in the backline, which should have play, and I'm thinking a lot of the time you see Talonflame with like Drapion, maybe more Peko as well as a team I've seen a lot, so I'm just going to invest right now in the fact that Shadow Annihilape with a shield should have quite a bit of play once that Talonflame is gone. In comes a charge move. It is going to be a Frenzy Plant, does a massive amount of damage to us, but Icy Wind as well is going to come through and do quite a bit of damage to them. Let's see if they're going to shield this up or if they're just going to opt to let their Serperior go down. They do no-shield that, and of course there's that more Peko on the backline. At this point, these counters are ripping through their HP. This Rage Fist will knock them out, and if they do opt to shield it up, I can just counter them down before the 2 Psychic Fangs are going to be reached. They let it go. They know at this point the counters are a little bit too much for this endgame matchup. GG to them. Alright, next game, Clodsire up against an Azumarill. We have Sludge Bomb for this, so it's not a bad matchup to say the least, but Sludge Bomb is not going to be able to one-shot them, right? So they're going to get to Ice Beams if they did stay in, but they actually do end up swapping out almost instantly here to their Corsola. We don't have a great answer, as I've said in the past, to this Pokemon, so instead I'm going to stay in here, go for these Earthquakes, try our best to whittle down this Corsola, and see how they want to play this out. In comes yet another charge move, a Nightshade likely going to be thrown from this Corsola, and I am a little bit worried about where my Shadow Annihilape is going to go this game. There is that Azumarill in the backline. There's this Corsola right here, right now, which I don't know how I'm going to deal with, and this Earthquake is not going to be quite enough to knock them out, but we do draw a shield either way. In comes this next charge move. It could be a Nightshade. I mean, it definitely is going to be. There's no way they're going to Power Gem us here, and Nightshade, it is going to come close to knocking us out, so I'm going to have to swap out to our Dugong, and our opponent likely going to throw a Power Gem before swapping out themselves. This game is looking a lot trickier than I'd like it to be at this point. It was a good lead, but this Corsola save swap is putting in so much work into us right now. Azu does come in. I'm going to go for the Icy Wind to try to make sure a player up doesn't knock us out from this range. Icy Wind is going to get no shielded, obviously, and Azumarill is not really going to want to shield here, especially when they're already down shields. And now Drill Run is going to start adding up over time, but we're so low at this point that despite the debuff, I think the bubbles after this Drill Run could potentially put us into knockout range. In comes a player up. It does do a ton of damage. We have a Jolron ready to go. It will chip him down a little bit, but our Shadow Annihilape is going to have a little bit too much work to do, I think, this game. There is still that Corsola in the backline. I need a lot of energy to have 2 Rage Fists to go against that Corsola if I ever want to knock them out before getting Astonished down, and I think their switch clock is going to be back up. It is, but they come in here with a Shadow Kanto Marowak of all things, which is not exactly what I thought they would do. I thought for sure Corsola would come in here. Either way, though, a lot of fast pressure. These Mud Slaps are adding up. Bone Club as well is going to force us to shield, and now I have to throw 2 Rage Fists if I want to knock out this Marowak. In comes the first. It is going to be able to do a lot of damage to them, but I don't know if they're going to shield or not. They do end up shielding that attack. I see MP on this next move here. This Rage Fist is going to knock them out, but this is still looking so bad for us right now because the fast pressure might just be a little bit too much for us to win this game. We do barely reach this Sludge Bomb here with our Clodsire before we end up going down, but the Sludge Bomb should not be enough quite yet to knock them out. I'd have to counter this down if I want any chance to win this game, but our opponent just has a little bit too much HP across the board here, and comes out as Emerald. Rage Fist would have been not quite enough, I don't think, from that range to knock them out, so even if I did throw it, it wouldn't have been enough there, and that Corsola was still a little bit too healthy in the backline. GG's to them. Next game, yet another very annoying Pokemon to see. It's going to be a Marowak, and we are counter-swapped by a Bastiodon here with our Dugong safe swap. This is exactly where we don't want to see Basti, right? We have a Fighting-type Pokemon, we have a Ground-type Pokemon. Of course, we're going to see it on our Ice-type. Luckily, though, our Ice-type does have Drill Run. Our opponent does opt to do a very early shield here, and now another Drill Run is going to be reached before a Stone Edge is going to be thrown. This Drill Run is going to do massive damage to them here if they do opt to let it go, and as you can see, it would two-shot them here, but I don't really need Switch advantage this game. I know that if I did get Switch, that Marowak would just kind of use the shields and the energy it already has to kind of just brute force its way through my entire team. So instead, I'm going to play around the shield advantage and see what our opponent's going to do. They know what I'm doing right now. They don't want to stay in that Bastion matchup. They want to make sure that I don't get a huge amount of energy, but they do this by coming in with their Steelix, meaning I get to avoid that Marowak into Clodsire matchup, which is exactly what we did want to avoid, and I can also use my Annihilape to close out the endgame here potentially. In comes the Psychic Fangs. It is actually a Dragon Tail using Steelix, which is kind of interesting. Normally nowadays you see a lot of Thunder Fang users, but Dragon Tail makes a lot of sense with this team. In comes the next Earthquake. This is going to knock them out if they do let it go, which it looks like at this point they're just going to sack their Steelix and hope that their Marowak in the back line is enough to win them this game. I have a bit of energy on this Marowak, but I have 2 shields to my name. I know that these counters are going to do a ton of damage, and despite the fact that you do have a Flamethrower loaded on that Bastiodon, I can go for these Rage Hits, likely get the shield, maybe even get a knockout here, or at the very least chip them down into range where a Sludge Bomb from our Clodsire is going to be enough to KO this Pokemon. In comes the next charge of it is going to be a Bone Club here. Our opponent does have the next move right now. I'm going to shield this up just to make it so they do have to combo play us, swap back into that Bastiodon, and give us the ability to overfarm with our Clodsire. There is that Bastiodon as we did expect. Flamethrower will be enough to knock us out. Shadow Annihilape is not known for its bulk, and down we go, but our Clodsire at this point, all it needs to do is overfarm as much energy as possible, get to an Earthquake, and then be very close to another Sludge Bomb after this. I know at this point, at 100 energy, I'm going to be only 2 Poison Stings away from a Sludge Bomb, and I know that Marowak is, I think, at this point, 3 Mud Slaps away from a move, so we can easily outpace, go for the Sludge Bomb, knock out this Ground-type Pokemon, and I guess this game was actually a full Clodsire sweep. We took out the Steelix earlier on this game, we just took out the Marowak and the Bastion as well, so good stuff, Clodsire getting an entire sweep this game. Next matchup, we're going to see a Gastrodon on the lead, so many Mud Slappers, right? But we have shown that we do have play into these Pokemon. Going to space swap our Shadow Annihilape and see how they want to play it out. Our opponent's staying in for just a second here. I could have thrown a Rage Fist, but I didn't really know if they were going to swap out and try to catch my move. Animations were looking a little bit distinct there. I end up shielding a Body Slam, not exactly what I meant to do, but I guess it's what ended up happening here. Ice Punch going to be thrown now against this Mandibuzz that is going to counter swap into our Annihilape. Ice Punch is going to come close to two-shotting, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough here to knock him out with this next charge attack. I'm going to undercharge because I know at this point they're likely going to no-shield this move, and if I can, I want to get a couple more Poison Stings on my Clodsire to get a lot of energy for that backline. In comes the Aerial Ace. It will knock us out at this point, but because we have a ton of energy that we can get with our Clodsire here, we might be able to go for Earthquakes or Sludge Bombs against that Gastrodon and get our shield back. In comes a Dark Pulse. It does do a little bit of our health, but honestly, Clodsire and Mandibuzz is so bulky, these Dark Pulses end up doing so little damage. If that Gastrodon comes in, I did a lot of counter damage against them, so I think at this point I can go for a Sludge Bomb bait, likely draw a shield, and maybe dance around with my Dugong and my Clodsire to hopefully win against whatever that final Pokemon is going to be. We get the shield here with that bait, which is exactly what we needed to see. Our opponent is staying in for just a second here as well. I'm going to no-shield this attack, knowing that I have no idea what the backline Pokemon is going to be. Body Slam bait is going to be called. Dunsparce is their final Pokemon. A little bit surprised they wouldn't have instantly just swapped this in. The desync switch clock so might give us an opening. With that said, Dunsparce does have super effective rock type damage here for our Dugong, super effective ground type damage as well for our Clodsire. This game is going to be very tricky to win. Rock Slide ends up coming through. I have another Icy one ready to go, and at this point I think I will be able to swap back into my Clodsire here, desync the switch clocks even more, Icy Wind is going to come through and do quite a bit of damage to them, put them into a Sludge Bomb range, and at this point, I just need to have energy at all times, just in case that Gastrodon comes back in, so I can Sludge Bomb them, potentially knock them out here with our Clodsire. In comes our next Sludge Bomb right now. Our opponent could shield this up if they want to, but the problem is if they do shield this move up, then I am free to Sludge Bomb that Gastrodon later on. They do shield it up here, and I know that I can survive this move. The most dangerous thing that could happen here is letting that Gastrodon get to an Earth Power, so I no shield this attack up. In comes that Gastrodon, but at this point, I know I can outpace both this Gastrodon to the next charge attack and also that Dunsparce as long as I overfarm enough energy here to reach the Sludge Bomb against this Pokemon and to be able to be about 3 or 4 Poison Stings away from a Sludge Bomb against that Dunsparce. We are now only 2 away, actually, which means that even if they were at the move in this next rollout, which I don't think they were, this Sludge Bomb will knock them out just before they can reach it. And somehow Clodsire coming back from a Dunsparce and a Gastrodon here in the back. GG's to our opponent. Next game here, Clodsire up against an Azumarill. Very good lead matchup. I know Sludge Bomb is super effective. Our opponent might stay in this if they're kind of soft to us, but they end up swapping out here to Annihilape. We don't have a hard answer to this, so we're going to stay in with our Clodsire and see how they want to play it out. Earthquake going to come through in just a second, but our opponent is going to throw a charge move first. Rage Fist comes through and does quite a bit of damage to us. In comes our Earthquake. Our opponent could shield this up, but this is a non-Shadow Annihilape. They could survive it just a bit better than the Shadow variant would, and they do have to let that go. Our own Annihilape is going to come in, try to counter them down, but it doesn't look like we have quite enough damage to do so. In comes our Rage Fist. I do have to shield this up if I want to keep any sort of health left over on our Annihilape. They are already at +1 attack, so now +2 after that next Rage Fist. That basically would have knocked us out if I would have let that go, or put us into counter down range, and that is not what I want to see. Instead, we're going to double shield our Annihilape here and see what our opponent wants to do. We know Azu could come back in here, potentially, but I'm boosted with my attack stat as well, and the switch clocks are going to come back up in just a second here. I might even be able to make a catch, potentially on either Dugong with an Ice Beam, or with a Play Rough on our Clodsire. In comes the Rage Fist. Our opponent is going to have a big decision to make. Do they go for the CMP? They tried to, but I make a catch here on what is almost certainly an Ice Beam. I think that was only 5 bubbles in the first place, so not going to be a Play Rough. Exactly what we wanted to see here. We have a full Rage Fist loaded on our Annihilape, and now all I need to do is keep energy on our Dugong at all times, just in case our own Annihilape does come back in. But I also know I can probably just go for an Ice Shard down against them as well. They're pretty low on that Pokemon, and Ice Shard is going to do quite a bit of damage to them here as a fast move. Ice Wing going to lower their attack stat as well. I did need 2 charges to knock this out, so might as well debuff them, make it so these Play Roughs are going to do a lot less damage, and then go for this Drill Run, potentially knocking them out, or putting them low enough to counter or poisoning them down later on. Drill Run does end up not quite knocking them out, but I can't get that Ice Shard down. Our opponent thinking about what they want to bring in, but I guess it must not have been a good matchup for them. They end up top lifting. Next game here going to be an Azumarill in the lead up against our Clodsire. Once again, a very good lead matchup. We have Sludge Bomb ready to go against this Pokemon. They are staying in for once, which means the Sludge Bomb, if it does end up landing, is going to do a massive amount of damage. Sludge Bomb being thrown, our opponent is going to let them move through, actually, and then they come in with their own Shadow Drapion. We do have a lot of good play to this Pokemon, but up energy, it can have quite a bit of play. I'm going to go for the Sludge Bomb bait. They have to shield this up, or else they get one shot here. Our opponent, though, making a massive call. No shielding a potential Earthquake. This game likely would have been over on the spot if I went for Earthquake there. That is such a crazy call by them, but it's going to cost us now, meaning this Shadow Drapion is going to have a lot more play than I would like it to. Azumarill as well does have energy on it, right? They swapped out with, I believe, an Ice Beam loaded, which means our Annihilape in the backline is going to be in a bit of a tricky spot. They get a defense drop as well with that Crunch, meaning that after this debuff, they're still going to be able to farm us all the way down with these Poison Stings, and that is going to make our life very uncomfortable. They get that full farm down. A loaded Drapion is never what you want to see. They are debuffed though, so I know I can survive 2 Aqua Tails, but they have a lot of energy, not only on this Pokemon, but on that Azumarill as well. I don't know what we're going to do this game to try to win it. In comes another charge move here from the Shadow Drapion. At this point, though, I'm going to save energy on our Clodsire, come in, try to counter them down with our Shadow 8, but the final Pokemon is unfortunately even worse than the Azumarill would be for us. It is an Air Slash Mandibuzz. This is going to be a bad matchup just because these counters and Ice Punches, despite doing a lot of neutral and super effective damage, are not going to be enough to knock them out before these Air Slashes and Aerial Aces are going to add up on their own. We don't have a lot of health remaining this game. They have an Aerial Ace they're throwing right now, and I need to hope that a Rage Fist is going to be enough to knock them out from this range. I need this boosted I need my attack boosted rather from this Rage Fist so I can also knock out the Azu with a move. Rage Fist comes through and it survives on like 1 HP. What can I do there? I just have to shield this up at this point. Try to go for a farm down. Maybe I can still win this one if I can land a move against this Azu, but they have a move right now already loaded. I guess they're going for a farm down as well. They know they survived this attack and they can Ice Beam my Clodsire for free later on. Unfortunately for us, we are going to lose this game. We could have had a chance actually if I would have gone for an Earthquake. That game would have been over on the spot. But, you know, I guess sometimes I make a bad call. Sometimes your opponents make good calls as as well. So it's just how it goes. All right, Shadow K-Whack in the next game. So we got a good lead. We lost, but hopefully we can win this bad lead. Our opponent, though, is swapping in an Ariados up against our Dugong. Not what we want to see, so a lot of RPS going on right now. But I know Dugong does have a bit of play in this matchup. Trailblaze is going to come through and do quite a bit of super effective damage to us, but this Icy Wind is going to try its best to neutralize this Pokemon as well. Icy Wind is going to lower their attack stat to make it so they're only at neutral attack right now despite their own boost, but they're going to be able to outpace us, go for another charge attack right now, and likely make our Dugong be very low on HP. And I guess they didn't go for a lunge. I thought they might lunge us there. I was going to say that our attack is going to be lowered, but because they went for a Trailblaze here, I know for a fact I can go for this Icy Wind. It should be able to knock them out or draw a shield, and now our opponent is going to go for another charge attack. I honestly probably should not have gone for that Ice Shard there. Making it so they're this low means that now I only get 1 or 2 Poison Stings at max on our Clodsire. I need a lot of energy here if I ever want any chance of flipping this Shadow K-Whack matchup, but I also know that we have a decent amount of energy, so I can still go for an Earthquake despite not having enough to potentially go for it as quick as I would have wanted. Earthquake still will do a ton of damage, and we're outside of range where we're going to get knocked out by a single Bone Club, meaning a Sludge Bomb or potentially just counter damage later on this game could knock out this Marowak. They do throw a Bone Club here. I have the Sludge Bomb ready to go, so we're actually able to either draw a shield or knock out this Ground-type Pokemon. Sludge Bomb comes to our opponent, does opt to shield it up, and now in comes our Shadow Annihilape. I just have to hope whatever that final Pokemon is going to be ends up losing the Zero Shield matchup to Annihilape. I don't know what it could be. It's, I thought that was a Mandibuzz. No, that's a Moltres, actually. I have to CMP after 8 counters here and hope that this is enough. Ice Punch is super effective from an Annihilape here, of all things. Is this enough to knock him out? It barely is. We take out the Moltres with our Annihilape and barely take the win that game. GG's to our opponent there. That was a very close matchup, and our Shadow Annihilape plus Clodsire core putting in so much work. So yeah, if you're trying to climb a bit of ELO here at the end of the season, make sure to give this team a try. I know there's a lot of Mudslappers out there, and this team is a little bit soft to them, but as you saw, you can still overcome those leads if you do play around them a little bit. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the battles and you want to see more videos like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.